What is going on, everybody, and welcome to episode 91 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. And we're making it back-to-back, ladies and gentlemen. We covered Saratoga opening day last week. We're covering one of my favorite tracks of the year, opening day at Del Mar. Guys, welcome in. Thank you guys all for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. We had a bunch of people waiting to get in here, which, of course, is always great to see. So, again, thank you to everyone who showed up early and ready to go. But guys, let's continue to keep moving here. So please go down below the video player. Please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying the content, because not only does it show us that you guys are enjoying what we're putting out, but also it is completely free and it pushes this video out into the YouTube algorithm to hopefully bring like-minded horse players like yourself to the HHH Racing Podcast. And of course, for that, we thank you. bettinandboozin@gmail.com is my email. Please email me with any questions, comments, or concerns. You can also see scrolling at the bottom of the screen right now, you'll see our next show is tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern with Howard, Pete, and Paul, with special guest, great contest player, Alexa Zepp. They're going to be covering Haskell Day at Monmouth Park and all stakes going on for a great card on Saturday at Monmouth Park. But guys, we'll continue to go through. If you guys don't know, we not only post every single episode of Bettin N Boozin, but every single episode on the HHH Racing Podcast YouTube channel also gets uploaded in audio form, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. For those, please go rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your audio podcasts. Also, new power picks, new Saratoga and Del Mar only power picks are available. Unfortunately, I believe both the yearly subscriptions where you got a week free are unfortunately gone, but you can still sign up on a week-by-week basis, and you get a special discount if you are already a subscriber to our normal power picks, which I'll bring up right now at patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. Only $4 a weekend, $15.99 a month as billed by Patreon, but you'll get 2 tracks every single Saturday, price plays, spot plays, PICK5 grids, everything you need to be successful on any given Saturday. The HHH Racing Podcast has got you covered through the power picks. Again, patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. That link is also in the description as well. And if you want to see previous editions of those aforementioned power picks, or just want to learn more about us, HHHRacingPodcast.com is the place to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys all. I see you all in the chat. I will bring you up as soon as I bring on my co-host for the night. And unfortunately, 2 of our co-hosts are out for tonight. But there's one guy, of course, is going to be here. If we're covering West Coast, the West Coast bias is going to be here, my friend, Noah Maher. Man, what's going on?
What's up? I'm extremely excited for Saturday. One little mistake there, Kyle. Actually, the yearly subscriptions for the Power Picks are still available. So if you want to sign up, you have until Thursday at midnight for people that haven't signed up. I don't know why you wouldn't have. There's this guy, I heard he's pretty good. So you should probably go check him out. He'll be writing the picks. So
he likes to think he's pretty good is what he likes. Yeah. The guy next to me, Noah Maher, West Coast bias himself, of course, is going to be writing those Del Mar only power picks. West Coast bias, Noah knows it like the back of his hand. He's played Santa Anita and Del Mar, being from the LA area. So he knows it like the back of his hand. He's going to be covering it all weekend. So if you guys have not subscribed yet, please go subscribe, HHHRacingPodcast.com. You can pay through Venmo or pay directly through PayPal on the website. Either one works for sure. I believe it is it's $19.99 a month or $19.99 a week, excuse me, but you get Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of those Del Mar power picks, and I'll bring it up right now. So just so people can see it. You can see right now, if you go to HHHRacingPodcast.com, you'll see Power Picks tip sheet right here. Our standard only Power Picks are always there. You can always subscribe to those. But Del Mar only Power Picks that Noah is writing, again, you can see PayPal. You can send the cost directly to Howard or Venmo, and Howard's personal Venmo is right there. And you'll get the Power Picks every single morning for that card, whether it's Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. You'll get it that morning. So if you guys are at all interested, it's obviously extremely good. $95 for the full meet, but $15.99 for the individual week if you're a Power Pick subscriber. If you're not a Power Pick subscriber, 1, I don't know what you're doing. 2, it's $125 for the full meet. Again, that's 1 full week free that we're giving to you guys, and the $19.99 for the individual week, which is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of that week. So again, only like $6 a card, Noah, even if you're not a Power Pick subscriber. If you are a Power Pick subscriber, it's just only over $5 a card. So again, we're still trying to make it very affordable for people here.
Yeah, definitely worth it. You should go check it out. And, even if you don't want to, you can just sign up for the weekends, the big weekends that they have, Pacific Classic or closing day or whatever. So, definitely do it. Our Saratoga's, definitely this weekend for sure. They got some good races that we'll cover in a couple minutes here. And even our Saratoga, the last weekend for opening weekend, were very good. So definitely go check out both of them.
It's this game's nuts. No, 2 weeks in a row with Belmont at Saratoga and then Indiana Derby Day. I think I hit one good bet. I hit money supply at 9-1 on Indiana Derby Day, and other than that, if you put the Empire State Building in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, I couldn't jump off and hit water. So the fact that we came back last week at Saratoga and absolutely crushed everything. It was a fantastic week. So again, if you're not subscribed yet, please go subscribe right now. And I can see a bunch of people putting very nice words in the chat about him, so I'll get to those in 1 second. Katie, of course, is here. Terry Frank is here. Good evening. The boss is here. Tom Espinoza is here. Jim Pillars is here. Equine Edge, the Equine Edge boys. Bettin N Boozin, the World Series of Poker final table. Absolutely, man. Thank you guys all for the Equine Edge guys for joining in. Greatly appreciate it. Mike Saletta, of course, was here. Thanks so much, man, for joining the show. Let's see. Who else is here? Marco Perez. Definitely have a margarita for you. Someone say margarita, Marco. Cheers to you, my friend. Have a good time this week at Del Mar. You'll see right here, Del Mar rules. I'll be there for opening day. Marco, good luck. And hopefully you can get some good opinions from this podcast. Mario Diaz is here. Saratoga had a very low turnout for opening weekend. Saratoga usually tends to fix that going through the obviously the weather, especially this week too. The weather's never helps up in upstate New York, but Chris Couples is also here. Guys, thanks so much for joining the show. Chris Wall says support the show with Power Picks, like and subscribe to the channel. Man, these Equine Edge guys, they're very astute viewers, I would say.
Yeah, they are.
Please support the Power Picks, and like and subscribe. Thanks, Chris, for joining the show. Mike Saletis is great value. Terry Frank, worth every penny. Again, only $5 a card. Well, less than a lot of people are charging, and you'll get just as much, if not more, information. Guys, let's move real quick into this, because this pick 5, guys, it's very competitive, big fields, and man, it's tough. It's not the easiest by any means. Yep. So we'll get into it real quick here. And again, cheers to everyone out there. Let's hopefully get some winners this week, and let's get right into the show. Del Mar starts race number 7, the late pick 5 on Saturday. Starts with the Caesar Sportsbook Oceanside Stakes. It's going a mile on the turf for 3-year-olds only, and starts right now. Noah, field of 11. We don't have morning lines, of course, and when we show the PPs, guys, we will not have numbers next to the PPs because they're in their early state. So DRF doesn't finalize PPs usually until about 2 days out. So they'll finalize them tomorrow with numbers. We'll try our best to say the numbers as we go along. But just when you see the PPs, you will not see the numbers next to them. So of course, we apologize, but sadly, there's nothing that we can do about it. There's going to be King of Gosford, Noah, is a horse for D'Amato that's going to be pretty heavily bet, I would imagine. He's been very, very good since coming over from Great Britain. But I'll tell you what, Noah, that's who neither of us are going with in this race. And somehow we're very lockstep.
No, this is why you were laughing. Okay.
I was when Noah logged on today, I was chuckling to myself. We were exactly the same in this first race. Both going with a great horse and a horse that's going to benefit from the most likely pace scenario. The number 4 Guy Named Joe, Noah, for Doug O'Neill, and Juan Hernandez hops aboard. You don't see him hop too much on for Doug O'Neill. Usually he's obviously Baffert and he rides, for others. But when he hops on a Doug O'Neill horse, he's live. Was on him the last two out of the last 3 times and rode him really well.
Yeah, I do like that he's been on him before. Guy Named Joe is just a horse that's always relished distance and pace, and he's definitely going to get those 2 things in this race. If you go to the time form, the pace projector, I think there's like 5 or 6 horses projected to be on or near the lead, and it's got it coded red for fast pace. If you look at some of his last couple races, 3 back, he was ahead behind Stay Hot, who's probably the best in this division here in California. O'Neill had enough confidence to ship him up to Keeneland, where he got a little bit of a softer turf course, which is probably not what he wants. Still ran completely fine, only lost by 2 3/4 lengths. And then the Desert Code, 6.5 is way too short for him. He was the only one making up ground in that short field. King of Gosford and All That Glory just kind of went 1-2 around the track that day. And guy named Joe, galloped out well. It looks like they're pointing to the spot. He's been off for a little over 2 months. So I'm going to go with him, just assuming that it's hot up front. And you like to play towards these closers, especially early in the meet here.
Yeah, Del Mar's both courses at Del Mar, at least in my experience, have been very fair. That's been the past 2 years. It's been very fair. You can see the King of Gosford is 3-5. He's the number 2 horse, getting, again, a nice, easy lead. Guy named Joe is the 1 horse here on the inside. You'll see him, he's really the only one kind of going to do anything late. It's kind of going to run 2-5 here. Guy named Joe, like you said, gallops out really well. You can see them hit the top of the stretch. There's nothing against King of Gosford. No, obviously we both have him in there. I just think he's going to be a little bit up against it than he has been. And like an effort like this is obviously strong, but it doesn't necessarily blow me away by any means.
Yeah, and it's funny because King of Gosford, you see him, he just kind of sticks his neck out of the wire. So he's got a good sense of where he kind of needs to get his head down. Other than, what he's doing, a guy named Joe, if you look at that race, they went 22-1, which is not really that fast for down the hill, especially with that firm turf that they get at Santa Anita. And they did have the rails out. So if you're kind of looking for an excuse in that race, I know his numbers have been kind of consistent his last 3 or 4 starts. Yep. But I think there is still a little room for improvement. And with the pace and that whole scenario, I like him quite a bit.
Yeah. And like you said, you mentioned the down the hill generally does play towards milers. It kind of has that type of feel, but I think the extra 1.5 furlongs here to the mile is definitely going to be to his liking. You mentioned also the pace scenario, Noah. And I mean, here this Timeform has it listed as a pretty fast pace. Guy named Joe is going to be apparently, according to Timeform, pretty far out the back. I don't know if he's going to be that far back. He doesn't necessarily like to be, that deep of a closer. He has done it before. I.e. that Keeneland race where, he just really couldn't get his footing, came running late, lost by 2 3/4, granted a pretty close finish, especially far back. He has come from farther back, so it's not going to necessarily hurt me. Make me concerned if he's going to be way out the back, especially if they're going real fast up front. So just based on that pace scenario, I think guy named Joe definitely has the edge in that regard, as long as he can continue to run his best at that mile distance. We mentioned King of Gosford. Noah, you have second, I have third. Again, he's done absolutely nothing wrong. He's 3 for 3, just with that pace scenario we mentioned. And, he's not necessarily stepping up, but he's facing a little bit better. I just think it's a little bit of a different test than what he's had so far here in the States.
I think he's more of a stalker style than you kind of see on paper. In that down the hill race in the Desert Code, he broke fine. He kind of sat off of All That Glory and then just kind of made a little progressive move and got even with him at the top of the stretch. So I don't think he would be one that would get too caught up in that. Freysu's a very smart jockey. If you're looking for someone to kind of get the jump on some of the other closers, which honestly on paper, there's really not a ton of closers, which is why I think you and I both like the 10, who's a little bit of a fuzzy in here.
Yeah.
But yeah, no doubt King of Gosford, the horse to beat. And if you're worried about the distance, D'Amato actually won this horse with a horse named Conclude, who I think was coming either from 6 or 6.5 and stretched out and actually took him the whole way, which is something you don't normally see early in the meet.
Look, if there's one thing that if you've never looked at California racing before, it's that you can never exclude D'Amato on the turf. That's about as layman's terms I can get it, but it's basically the Chad Brown of the West Coast out here on the turf. Rothschild, Noah, as you mentioned, is a little bit of a fuzzy, but that last race I thought was really good. Got a pretty decent trip behind, but again, you mentioned Stay Hot being probably the best in this division. Of course, this is for 3-year-olds. He's an older, but I mean, that last race was real good, only losing by a neck at 23-1. You kind of have to come off a layoff. Yachteen's pretty good off these layoffs. And if he continues to take a step forward off that last turf effort, now turning 3 from 2 years old, where he had a really good, a pretty good 2-year-old year, I think this is a pretty likely one to get in the money here.
Yeah, I think you'll get a decent price. Unfortunately, I'm not able to bring stats just because the PPs came out so late. But I definitely look into Tim Yaktine bringing horses off these long layoffs, especially here at Del Mar and especially on the turf. In that last race where he lost to Stay Hot, that was his first time on the turf.
Yep.
So you obviously kind of expect the natural progression the second time on the surface, as well as, first race as a 3-year-old. That last race was back in December. So one that I think will get a decent price. And like I said, really not a ton of closers. So going to get a pace setup. Just question is whether he's good enough.
Yeah. And Thomas knows makes up a good point. Outside turf posts are tough. I understand it's not the farthest run up to the first turn at the mile at Del Mar, Noah, but he's a horse that I'm much more concerned if he wants to be, pretty up close, especially in a pace that looks to be pretty hot up front. If he's going to sit back and sit mid-pack, that kind of negates my feelings about post position a little bit for someone like Rothschild.
Yeah, and he does have a lot of speed to the inside. The horse to his inside, Charge for Gold, is definitely going, and there's quite a few others too. So Kimura should be able to just kind of tuck in as he pleases. Probably sit 2-3 wide, hopefully not too wide. They should have the rails down to start the meet, I would think. So in theory, it should help him.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you by any means. There's other horses in here. Dan Blacker's bringing a horse over from Ireland. I mean, it's going to have to run huge off the layoff. Dan Blacker's not necessarily the best. He's like a mid-teens, I think, percentage off those layoffs. Charge for Gold, as you mentioned, Noah, makes sense numbers wise, but I don't envision a trip where he can win. I mean, he's stalked to win his maiden race, but at the mile distance or anything longer than realistically 6, he's always been on the lead. So I'd assume he's going to go. Scatify is a horse that I honestly really liked. I just don't. There's 2 things I don't know about him. I've
never known what to do with him.
Oh yeah, the distance I think is a problem, and I don't know if the horse ran well on turf, but the numbers are way better on dirt. I mean, it's just I like that effort that he can stalk. He can rate a little bit on the turf, but it's just I don't know about the distance for him.
Yeah, he's just always been a question for me. I've actually got him as a B just because I am a little scared of him. Second time on the turf that we had mentioned. I thought that race that he did run on the turf 2 back was very impressive. Island Cruiser is a horse that's in this race, but Island Cruiser just kind of sat right off the speed and got the perfect trip. I thought Scatify was the one that ran the best race in that race. And it's funny because that's one of his lower numbers. So if he can kind of translate that form that he's shown in the dirt to the turf, I think he's one to consider. There's quite a few you have to consider in here. I tried to letter him as best as I can without looking at them too much. I've got the 3 and 4 as A's, and then I've got 1, 2, 8, and 10 as B's. I think All That Glory was one that last time he didn't show his best, but I have the question of whether he can actually sit off. Formidable Man is one I looked at coming over from Churchill. McCarthy, actually, this is one I was able to get his stat. McCarthy 1 for 21 in non-graded stakes on turf at Del Mar. So just, a couple of knocks on some of these others. I thought the 3 and the 4 were probably the more likely. And then after that, it was just anyone's best guess at that point.
I know. Then, a lot of these saddler horses, like Island Cruiser is going to probably be bet. The horse is 4 for 5 in the money. These saddler horses are going to take money. These McCarthy horses will probably take a little bit of money. And that leaves horses like O'Neill's always going to take money too. That's not what I'm not trying to say that we're going to get a high price on this horse, but the money tends to follow the trainers, Noah, at least from my perspective. Like King of Gosford's definitely going to be the favorite, at least in my eyes, in this race.
He should, yeah.
And like Yaktine, McCarthy, a lot of these guys take the money, but with a guy named Joe with the pace narrow we're showing, I think he's got a very, very good chance to win this race. There's one question I wanted to bring up, Noah. I want to see if you had anything, because I've definitely heard about it. I'm not the most versed in it by any means.
God, is this the tide thing?
It is the tide patterns, yeah. Because Chris Walsh just wanted to bring it up. He said, "Do you guys follow the tide patterns?" I usually don't, but I find it very interesting that because there's been a lot of studies that have come out or, studies, quote unquote, people look at the numbers and they, the way the track plays has been linked to following the tide patterns, making the dirt tighter or whatever. So just want to see if you had anything on that before we move on.
That I've heard people that firmly believe in it, and I've had people firmly believe that it doesn't do anything. Just looking at this race, if you can pick a winner, I mean, it's hard enough. So
right.
hard enough to try and you get these lightly raced horses that you don't know if they're going to step up. You got horses, trying different services for the first time, and you also got they got the Ship and Win program.
Yep.
So you got horses coming from other parts of the country. So I think it's just hard enough to try and use that in your handicapping.
No, that's fair. And like I said, there's a ton of stuff on it, guys. If you want to read more about that tide patterns and affecting Del Mar, considering Del Mar's right on the ocean, it's a fantastic read. And obviously I need to get a little more versed in it myself as well. But if you want to help prepare for Del Mar, that's a very interesting read as well. Just to shout out a couple people, guys, before we move on. There's a new person in the chat I wanted to bring up. Felipe Hernandez Jr. Thanks so much. He says, I'm from the Golden Gate Field area in the Bay Area. Thanks for helping handicappers get an edge. Felipe, thanks so much, man, for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Hopefully you learn a few things and hopefully you can bring it back. Jeffrey Wilson is here. What's up, my friend? Getting ready for the British Open. I need one of my golfers. I'm backed by $1 million in my golf pool. I need one of my golfers to I need them to at least make the cut is what I need. And if hopefully Justin Rose can work some old time magic, but we'll see about that, guys. Let's move on to the next race here. Race number 8 is a maiden special weight, 75,000. Going, hold on, give me 1 second. It's not loading for me yet. There we go. Going 6 furlongs on the dirt, field of 9. And Noah, you and I have been talking about this horse for a long time. We've covered him at Santa Anita. We've covered him everywhere. And surely he doesn't run into another monster this time as well. The most likely favorite, although honestly, I could see some weird stuff going on here. The number 6, who we both have on top, Santa Rena for Free Sue and Mark Glatt. Miramati's definitely going to be at least second choice for Juan Hernandez and Bob Baffert. And then, we both have the number 7, Angier? Angier? Angier?
I think it's Angier.
Angier? We'll go
Angier. You question my pronunciation.
I know. The Florida bred, which you don't see very much. Obviously, Baffert. Kimura takes the mount there. You have the number 9, Dagger Ranch, in second. Basically, the other Baffert, ridden by Mike Smith. But we'll talk about Santarena first, Noah. I mean, look, we just go through this horse on paper seems like a quote unquote money burner. He's ran second 3 times. Granted, only 4 starts, so I wouldn't call him a money burner yet. But look at these horses he's lost to, Noah. And I know you and I have talked about it a lot. Baldwin Lie was a horse that came back, won with a 97, came back in the La Brea, lost by 7, but was 2-5 and got an 87. Next time out, comes back and goes against Parenting. And if you don't know who Parenting is, Parenting came back to win the affirmed by 7.5 for Bob Baffert, getting a 95. Then you come back and he comes back at Santa Anita and gets against Eagles Flight, who, if you don't know who Eagles Flight is, that is the half-brother to Flightline, who was insanely impressive and won by going away 2 3/4. Santarena clearly second best again. Noah, surely it doesn't happen again. Surely.
I mean, you wouldn't think so. There are a couple first-time starters to the inside. None that I was really super interested in. But I mean, you'd be a little more worried with horses like this, just because from a pure handicapping standpoint, at least for me, you see horses run second 3 times and just don't like to get their picture taken. But it's just the fact that he hasn't been able to get his picture taken. I mean, he's faced some really good horses, and it's not like he's, winning these races like in a bunched up field. No, he's been clear of the 3rd and 4th place finishers in a lot of his races. Just to kind of show his ability, and the numbers, prove it. It's just a whether of if we see another horse jump up and do that, which it's definitely possible. but I don't know. We're just gonna have to see.
I know. And the other thing I don't like necessarily, obviously, is the 93 to two 83s. But parenting Eagle, like they would be, again, I know they're not maiden, so it's not a fair point, but they would be miles ahead of this field right now. And the fact that Santorena comes back, hopefully what looks like a little bit, there's no standout monsters, I guess is what I'm trying to say, like last time with Eagles Flight. So hopefully he should get a pretty good trip towards the front and be able to finally break his maiden. But I'll tell you what, Noah, you want to talk about a money burner. This is, granted, he's ran in very tough spots. He ran in a futurity spot first time out, then ran in the Del Mar futurity, only lost by 3/4 to Prince of Monaco, came back this year in an N1X, still as a maiden, at Pimlico on Preakness Day, got third as the 1-1 favorite. This horse has been 3-5, 8-5, 3-5, 1-1, and has gotten no better than third. Got no better than third by 1 3/4. Did get second, but lost by 7 1/4. This one's a money burner for me. And Noah, if this one wins, I think he'll have to beat me.
Yeah,
and you obviously agree as well.
Well, you have him in second, so
yeah,
I guess it wouldn't be that much of a surprise for you. It would for me. He ran his tail off in the futurity, only finishing 3/4 of a length behind Prince of Monaco. No, it's just really weird how Baffert's kind of managed his campaign. Although, to your point, there must be some reason that they're keeping him in the barn. Because, I mean, if he can't run, I mean, you just throw him in a claiming race and you get like 40 shakes for him because everybody would want him.
Yeah.
So there's got to be something in the mornings that Baffert sees, and JJ gets back on. It's really hard to trust him, and I'm going to go with some that have a chance to step up and improve over a horse that's over 5, which you don't really see too much in the Baffert barn.
No, and that one of those horses is Dagger Ranch. Again, the other Baffert in this race. Mike Smith, who you definitely don't see ride for Baffert that much, getting aboard. This is a horse out of Indian Blessing, Noah, and who was a very, very good horse in her own right, winning the test in 08 by 7, and others. And siblings, 10 Blessings, but unfortunately, before she got injured, she was third, and she was grade 1 showed in the Malibu, high numbers. So this one's definitely one to look like they can run. It just seemed like a really weird kind of, not an afterthought per se, but to have Mike Smith on a horse like this, it almost felt a little weird to me.
It is, although it could kind of be a tell,
right?
Because, like you said, Mike Smith doesn't normally hop on for him. If this were any other trainer in the California circuit that was coming off of this long of a layoff, I don't know if I'd like this horse as much, but it's Baffert, and this horse was like first time out. Ran in a pretty good field at the time, although some of those horses haven't really gone on to be as good as they were expected. Also working well in the morning. I think this is one, and same thing with 7, where if you get your works DRF or if you watch them XBTV, you kind of have to pay attention just because on paper, Baffert's just notorious for always working fast.
Right.
But just the way that they do it, I think is much more important.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. And the other thing I like about this one, it's not necessarily that he didn't run a step last time. He was kind of, he was bumped a couple times, but he kind of stayed on. He was just kind of in that 2.5 range, ranged up a little bit and then kind of dropped back again. Seemed like the horse, maybe the horse wasn't ready. Then takes a year, takes 11 months, 11 and a half months. Now Bob brings him back here, like you said, always notorious for working great, but this is definitely one I could see, a lot of people overlooking a little bit. They're never going to overlook a Baffert, but you know what I mean? And based onto his other entries and Santorena, I think you might get a really good price in this one. And first time out at 3, that's when I could see definitely upsetting the field. And what did Michael Lawson's in the chat? Thanks, Mike, for joining the show, man. He said, what was it? Angi. That's still annoying. If that's the way you say it, it's still annoying.
It's like Australian or something.
I know. Either way, first time for turf for Baffert, which you don't see. Now coming back to the dirt, same distance, obviously working forwardly. Gets Kimura aboard, who Bob's used him more and more. We both think is definitely at least worth a use underneath.
Yeah, I think this might be the one that gets overlooked. I think people will probably bet Dagger Ranch. I think Dagger Ranch will probably be out of the Baffords. I'd say probably the shortest price. It's a little hard to tell. But Angier, I think is interesting. Something that Baffert doesn't do often that you mentioned is debut first time, but actually a very interesting stat. He's actually 2 for 3 going turf to dirt in his second career start here at Del Mar. And the last one he did it with was back in the fall with a horse named Coach Prime, who he actually debuted going 2 turns on the turf just because he was, a 2-turn horse. This is one I have to think that was just a race to get into him.
Yeah.
Going by the breeding, there's really not any turf breeding anywhere. So just the fact that he did that, I think Baffert was just, trying to get one into him. And Kimura, like you said, he's picked up more and more talented horses in the Baffert barn as time goes on. One of them, Mr. Fisk, who's been really good as of late. And for Pegram, Watson, and Whiteman as well. Interesting that the horse is Florida bred. But I think we'll get overlooked in the betting, and one I'll certainly be using underneath.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you by any means. Obviously, I have the horse in third. Miramati, guys, is the horse. I feel like he's probably most likely to finish somewhere in the money. I would never play him on top of the odds that he's most likely going to be on Saturday. I just think Santorena looks, if he can finally get away from monsters, I feel like this is going to be his time. If this isn't his time to break his maiden, unless he runs into another one, I don't know. Maybe the horse just loves, as Noah said, not to get his picture taken, but definitely one that makes the most amount of sense anywhere. Angier makes a ton of sense as well. Like you said, maybe overlooked. Dagger Ranch. If you guys want my full lineup, it'll come out my full picks. It'll come out Saturday at AP Roscoe K on X. Noah Maher will also probably point out something. Also, Howard is putting polls in the chat, guys. If you're on YouTube, please respond to those polls. It's actually, he just pointed out what's your favorite horizontal to play at Del Mar. And there's the $1 pick 6 they made, not a jackpot this year. The late pick 5 doubles. So if you guys see those polls pop up in the chat, please feel free to vote on those as well. And I still stand by that. Any name like that, it's just annoying. Honestly, it's just annoying above all else. I'm going 627. Noah's going 697. Noah, let's move on to race number 9. This is the feature on the card. It is the Grade 2 San Clemente Stakes. Excuse me. Christophe Clement is always where I go whenever I see that now. It's San Clemente.
Wrong part of the country.
Yes, no kidding. 1 mile on the turf, and again, Noah, full field of 12, man. And this is not an easy race by any means. A lot of D'Amato's bringing 2, Urton's bringing 2, Sadler, Yachtine, D'Amato's bringing 3, excuse me. Mandela's got 2. Just, again, we don't have morning lines, so we don't know who was going to be thought to be the morning line favorite. But Noah, we've been locked up the whole way, my friend, and it doesn't stop here. We're both going with the maiden breaker. I scream, you scream, or is cream, us cream. Basically is how you can read it as well. Like it's stupid, man. Just stupid. Is I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream, and hopefully we'll be screaming for this horse to come home on Saturday. But look, that last race, Noah, I don't know, was very impressive. A big number as well. Again, got a perfect trip, but one that I can envision again here.
Yeah, if you want to talk about visually impressive, Ice Cream, You Scream, like you said, did get a pretty good trip, but once she got clear, her turn of foot was just something you don't necessarily see a lot in these turf races. And the margin of victory, it's a little surprising to see such a large margin of victory in these turf races here in California, just because they're a little notorious for kind of being a little bunched up at the wire. And she was, I remember, I'm pretty sure I was betting that day. She was bet like a sure thing. And sure enough, she ran well. She's the 3 in the little red feather silks. But once she kind of gets in the clear, she does make contact with 8. But after that, a little bit of a lugging in, but going just as fast forward. And that stride is just something you don't see a lot.
That's what I was going to bring up too. It's the long reaching stride. And man, it was never a doubt, really never looked like a loser at all at any point in that race. Again, it's going to be a tough ask. It's a big jump up, of course, coming from her. Oh no, sorry, not a maiden breaker. Excuse me. I'm thinking of a race down the line, but still broke her maiden. Now then went to an optional claimer at 6 at Santa Anita. Now stretching out to a mile. That's another question mark, of course, but the way she powered away there, she was in hand by the end of that race. She looks all the part, and if she can continue to do it at a mile, if you go look at breeding wise, I mean, Silver Screamer, the dam, was a very, very good turf router herself. The family tree has been a lot of turf sprinters. You can see here as I go, Ice Cream, You Scream, Tap, Tap, Taparoo. Fantastic name, by the way. Was more of a turf sprinter. Only won once out of 10 tries, but still, I mean, winning at 6, or running well at 6, running well at 5.5. It was tried at the mile. Definitely better turf sprinting, but if you continue to go through, I mean, more of a sprinter, but a miler as well. West Sider, House of Danzig, never won a race, but still just seems to me, Noah, that she can get the mile, and especially if she continues to run like that with that type of trip, which is what I envision her getting here, I think she's definitely a very likely win candidate. And we don't stop there. No, granted, I think Medora will most likely be I think she'll most likely be the favorite for Urton. I think the trip is going to have to be a little, not necessarily a question mark. I think she's going to have a very similar trip to Ice Cream, You Scream, but the difference is going to be the post. I mean, she's out in the 10 post. She wants to be a little bit more forwardly placed, not necessarily on the lead, but she wants to kind of be in that same stalking trip as Ice Cream, You Scream. Although they have Ice Cream, You Scream on the lead, Noah, which I didn't see.
I don't agree with
at
that.
all. I mean, maybe because she's coming from sprinting to routing, they think she's going to have a little bit more speed early on. I just think she definitely runs well with a target. She'll definitely be in behind horses. Again, I have nothing against Medoro. Medoro's run very, very well. It's just a matter of, can she overcome the post? And but 80, 81 totally makes a ton of sense in this race, and working forwardly again.
Yeah, she's one where she really hasn't done anything wrong. The races that she's run, she's gotten some pretty damn good trips, and I think in a bigger field, I think there's more that can kind of go wrong with her, especially with the outside post. It's not really a very legitimate excuse, but I just feel like she's not going to get it as easy as she has in a couple of those races. Obviously, Urton's had her pointed to the spot, and Frazee rides again, which I forgot to mention. If you're worried about Ice Cream, You Scream, and worry about the kind of the jockey, what do they call it? Musical chairs.
Yeah, jockey gymnastics is why.
Frazee's not going to hop off a horse. It's 4-for-4, and Hector Barrios is just fine on the turf at Del Mar. But yeah, in terms of the time form, I thought Ice Cream, You Scream was going to kind of get the first jump. So I'm going to kind of take a chance there. And in a big field like this, Medoro was probably going to be, just because of all the ones you see in the 4-for-4, she's probably going to be lower on the board than she should.
I don't disagree with you by any means there. And between the posts, and again, she's done absolutely nothing wrong. She's 3-for-3 in stakes company, won a graded stake last time at 1 1/8, shortening back up to 1 mile, which I think is probably her preferred distance. I think she runs a lot better at 1 mile than 1 1/8. But again, she's going to be a lot lower, I think, than Ice Cream, You Scream. We'll see. We'll see what happens come post time, and obviously that'll change whether I play this race or not from a straight vertical standpoint. But Medoro's done absolutely nothing wrong. Definitely the classiest horse in the field, but between the post and the price, I'm looking elsewhere with Ice Cream, You Scream, and so is Noah as well. Noah, I'll let you finish up with the 5, but Zona Verde is a horse we definitely have to talk about with D'Amato. JJ Hernandez jumps aboard here as well. She's actually a little slow for this type of field. She's been a mainstay in this kind of, listed stake, low graded stake, turf mile division on the West Coast for D'Amato. And she's run very well, a lot of seconds. But the 2 things for me that stood out is that she's 2-for-2 at Del Mar, 3-for-5 at the distance. And she should realistically set another nice stalking trip, just like the other horses we like in this one.
Yeah, she definitely could. She's the one I'm kind of against in a race like this. For some reason, in the comments of all her races, it seems like she has like legitimate excuses, but then you watch the races and they're kind of not really that bad. She's been kind of facing similar, and she's been a little disappointing. she did break her maiden when she shipped over from Ireland at Del Mar. And then I honestly wasn't a huge fan of her in the Jimmy Durante, but she got one of the easiest leads I've ever seen on this dirt course. So one that just because of the connections is probably going to take money, and you just haven't really seen that strong effort or improvement from her. So for me, from horizontal, vertical, I'd probably include her maybe as a C, just as a backup, but just not for me.
Yeah, defensively, basically, you're just not. I don't disagree with you by any means. It's almost like she's kind of played her hand. She's that mid-high 70s horse. Unless she takes another big step forward here, it is off a little bit of a layoff, so maybe she's getting a freshening up from D'Amato. Maybe she'll run well. That's why I have her third. She makes a ton of sense just from a tactic standpoint and a connection standpoint, of course. But no, again, I don't disagree with you being against her by any means. Invincible Molly is a horse that should be a pretty decent price, but is on the improve, which on the contrary to why you don't like Zona Verde, I'm sure is why you like Invincible Molly. Again, stretching out a little bit, but has run well, and based on the way she's run, she should enjoy the stretch out and the breeding as well.
Yeah, there's actually an article about her on DRF. So if you guys haven't seen that, go check it out. They interviewed Jeff Mullins, and he basically said all the jockeys that have been on her, which are Kimura and Barrios, basically said that she's going to love the extra distance. So I have to bank on the fact that Jeff Mullins knows what he's talking about. I mean, he's 25% for the year.
Yeah.
He's got some very good stats. Although he does have a little bit of a negative stat. He's only 2 for 29 in graded stakes on turf at Del Mar. But he doesn't really have a lot that are really of this quality. And Maldonado, I think, should have her close, probably in that second flight, similar to Ice Cream, You Scream. It's just a matter of whether she can kind of step up again. She is, maybe slightly slower.
Yeah.
But I think she should step up with that distance, and I'm going to take a shot with her.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. This would be based on the way I play as well. I think this would be a horse I would definitely use over Zona Verde. Just Zona Verde has been that classy horse, but we know what she is. Invincible Molly looks to be on the improve. As you said, Jeff Mullins, they should appreciate the distance. That should only help the numbers standpoint as well, and she looks to get the trip again. Invincible Molly definitely makes a whole ton of sense. There's a bunch of other horses in here that do make a ton of sense, but seem a little bit slower, or they kind of have one number out of nowhere, like Sakura Blossom. That last time at a mile and an eighth was a really good run from her, but the 81, especially on turf, comes out of nowhere really on the screen. She ran well in the Arizona Oaks, but got a low number. Came back at Santa Anita third, got a pretty good number on the dirt, then runs in the Honeymoon and gets second at 29-1. Going to be less than that on the day, most likely. So this is a horse I'd also be looking to play against, but probably will get bet based on that last race. And there's others in there as well. Of course, we don't have the time to cover everybody, not especially if we have the same exact horses on top. I'm going 6-10-9. Noah's going 6-10-5. Noah, let's finish up here. Race number 10 at Del Mar, which is the penultimate leg of the late pick 5. It is an allowance optional 40,000 going 6.5 furlongs on the dirt. Field of 8, which is the smallest field on the entire day. In the entire sequence, and when that's the smallest field in the sequence, that's a pretty good one, a pretty good betting one itself. You'll see the field right here, and there's two horses, Tarantino for Mark Glatt's going to take money, and probably Yellow Brick for Mandela. I'll bring up the I'll bring up the picks right now, Noah.
Oh, no, are you kidding me?
Don't worry about it, Noah, because get this. It gets better. Watch this.
That is unbelievable.
Oh, man. And Money Run, Money Run's going to be, taking money, but probably not the favorite on the day. And I'm sure you like him for the exact reason why I do as well, but I'll let you start first. What'd you like most about the number 6 Money Run?
Well, this is what I had kind of talked about. You get these horses that, you either get California horses that claim somewhere in the country and then bring them for that ship and win program, or you just get trainers from out of the country, or not out of the country, out of the state. I think the requirement is it has to be at least a year since the last time you ran in California. I don't know the exact, you get like 40% or something, but a lot of times the trainers that normally don't run in California. They come and they drop in for a tag, or they drop in for a lower claiming price than they were, and they just try and get the win, and then they'll get that purse money on top of that. But Money Run was one. Peter Miller, claim from Steve Asmussen. I'm sure you saw the same thing in terms of the pace. It looks like Money Run could find himself on the lonely lead.
And I'll tell you what, Timeform thinks the same thing, Noah. There you go.
Yeah, you know Edwin Maldonado is going to get to the front no matter what it takes, and it doesn't really seem anybody to be pressing him. So he could kind of have it his own way. After Peter Miller claimed, has gotten to California and worked well. Worked to 59.3 on July 13th, which is 3 out of 50. And just kind of from a clearly paced standpoint, I was a little negative on some of the others and a little negative on the one, frankly. So I'd be interested to see what you have to say. But talk about Money Run first.
I mean, you hit it all on the head. Numbers completely fit. It's a complete pace scenario play, and it's an interesting one. Peter Miller goes to claim at Churchill, brings back to the West Coast, and just first after claim by Peter Miller, I mean, 29 for 131, 22% in the last 5 years. Getting that, it is going to be a little step up from the claiming to the optional claiming level. Not in for the tag, Noah, which I really like. I like that he doesn't have all his conditions filled. It just, and from pace, it just seems like no one's going to be pressing, and Edwin Maldonado should have it all his way. And if that's the case, at 4-1 or 7-2, I'd be gladly to take that on Money Run. The only other horses we have are Thorn House, who is a horse that has a ton of numbers that make a whole ton of sense in this race. They were in Calbred races. In the open company, the horse still hasn't run that bad, granted on the turf, but 2 seconds and an 85, 86, 88. Now coming back to the dirt, where his best race is still on the dirt for all the way back from 2022. This is also second off the layoff. I mean, makes a ton of sense. And if there's not going to be a whole lot of pace on, this one's just going to be chasing. And if the 6 stays all the way, it seems like this is a pretty good one, logical one for second.
Yeah, Thornhouse is just a horse that he's just a trier, and it doesn't matter kind of where he is in terms of early position in a race. He can be on the lead, he can come from out of it. You look back at that April race in 2023. I mean, he came from 6.5 lengths back and almost got up. So just one that you have to include, especially in verticals. I think Thornhouse will probably just be sitting off of the 6, probably in that second flight. One thing I did notice, which I don't notice a lot with Dean Pedersen's horses, this horse is working really well and on the dirt. So, which is probably why Pedersen is going to try the dirt. But I mean, he's done it well before. And like I said, working well, you get the turf to dirt. One that I thought second off the layoff, you're going to see probably his best. And it looks like he's shown his best at Del Mar here too, 2 for 2.
Don't disagree with you by any means. Obviously makes a ton of sense. I like the second off the layoff angle. It's going to have to show back on the dirt, but like you said, working very well. Makes a whole ton of sense. Doug Pedersen is not the biggest barn by any means, 3 for 28 on the year, but you said, you see this horse working really well. The numbers this horse has thrown up makes a whole ton of sense, especially based on the pace scenario as well. Yellow Brick's the last horse that we have, and I'll talk about one other horse who Howard brought up in the chat. Yellow Brick is another horse that has a bunch of numbers, but has run those numbers with, quick paces. And I'm just not sure that he's going to get that here.
Yeah, there's 3 slight concerns I have with Yellow Brick. The first one is the distance. I don't know if the 6.5 is really what he wants. I know he did break the maiden, and that was his only win at 7. But like you said, he did get a pretty good pace setup. I think that was the right after he got gelded, and they had him off Mandela had him off for a pretty long layoff. He's run well against similar company, going 2 turns, and I don't know if the 1 turn really suits him.
Yep.
The second one would be the pace. I don't necessarily know if he's going to get the pace that he wants, that he's gotten before, like you previously mentioned. And then the third is one that if you're not a regular Del Mar bettor, you wouldn't necessarily know this. But the 1 hole in these dirt sprints is just a death sentence. You have to be 2.5, 3 lengths better than this field And you have to have horses. First of all, you have to be quick. And second of all, the horse that's just to your outside, if they're quick too, it could cause a lot of problems trying to fight for the lead in these sprint races. So, 3 slight concerns for a horse that I would guess would probably be the favorite. And one that if I'm playing exact, I'm going to try to get out.
I love it. Yeah, like you said, I think he is going to be the favorite just based on the numbers. 1 for 10, 8 in the money, 5 seconds. That's another thing, Noah, that we talk about all the time. Especially with a race that's not, too pace heavy and shorter. Everything you said makes a whole ton of sense in this race. Navy Man is a horse that Howard brought up. This horse was facing very good horse, Mr. Fisk, Harlecap, 1 in Vermilion, who ended up winning the test stakes under obviously circumstance. But Dr. Vankman, this horse is a ton of running lines off the layoff from McCarthy. Off of 180 plus days. I'll just do it in live time here. McCarthy's 20 for 133, 15% on the win end, 46% in the money. So if not on the win end, in the money look is definitely worth looking, and will be one that if the pace does show a little bit more heat than what it shows based on time form, definitely one to get the first jump on a horse like Yellow Brick, Noah, like we talked about. And Mr. Iceman was a horse Michael brought up. Looks a little slow based on recent races, but these races at Oaklawn make a ton of sense, especially ones just sitting right off the lead. And if that's the case, if he can get that same type of trip, makes a whole ton of sense in here as well. I'm going 6-3-1. Noah is also going 6-3-1.
Kyle, right. One last thing with Mr. Iceman and just kind of the dynamic and the flow of the race. Just based off of time from US numbers, Mr. Iceman's got a 119 early and Money Run's only got a 91. But time form on the other hand's got the 6 on the lonely lead, which it'll be interesting to see because Peter Miller's got 2. He's not going to have both of them battle, right?
Right.
So I would think Mr. Iceman would probably sit off. He's shown to be able to do that well. And then Money Run's been good on the lead. And then Howard actually brought up the outside horse, Tranchi, which honestly I have no idea what to do. If that horse sends from the outside, it could cause problems. This might be a horse that I could see scratching. First time really gelding, first time Lasix. It's a very weird entrance or a weird entry for Adam Kitchingman. But yeah, it just kind of depends on what jockeys are kind of instructed to do in terms of pace and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and obviously the board can also tell you a bunch too if they think obviously the money will follow where the easy pace scenario is. So obviously good luck and look at the board before you bet, of course. Anyway, race 11, Noah's last race on the card, and I'll go to it right now. We'll go pretty quick through it as we have Jim Miller waiting in the background, and we'll talk about Hawthorne, of course, after this. And if you are enjoying the podcast, please go down below the video player here on YouTube, or if you're watching on Twitter, please come over to YouTube after you finish watching and please click the like button. It'll show us that you guys are enjoying the video, and please hit subscribe if you're coming back for the videos anyway on X. Because why? Because it's completely free to do, and it really helps us out and shows us that you guys are liking the content. Noah, I'll tell you, I'll promise you this: we are not going with the same horse again in the last race. I promise you that. And actually, Equine Edge has their stuff up, so we'll go to them.
Sweet.
We'll go to them for the last race. Here, it's a full field of 12, Noah, with a couple also eligibles, or with, I believe, a couple. Yeah, there's 2 also eligible. So, yeah, a couple. I was right the first time. Full field of 12, 2 also eligibles, going 1 mile on the turf, maiden special weight, 75,000. And, I mean, there's a ton of horses in this race. It makes sense. Obviously, it's a very wide open race, and Noah, obviously by our picks, although we both have the 8 and 9 in there. I'm going with the 8, Rostovsky. You're going with the number 1, Broheim, and a horse that I think is going to be a pretty decent price, and a horse we both have in there that I think is interesting is the number 9, Eisenhower. But no, I'll let you start first. Of course, Equine Edge gives you all the. I don't have Equine Edge morning lines up yet because it just came out, which is one of my favorite features of it. But they have percentages and everything you need on here as well. No, I'll go to here. And what do you like most about the number 1, Broheim?
Yeah, I'll let you talk about the 8 and the 9. But starting with Broheim, first of all, this is a wide open race. This will probably be the race just because we have separate picks that one of us will have a winner, and it'll be a decent price because this is a a very wide open field. But with Broheim, started the career in that very tough race that we talked about with Santarena, where you had Ball Don't Lie, Santarena, Winterfell for Baffert. That was a pretty live maiden race on dirt, and waits a couple of months. Actually switches from Mendez to McCarthy, tries him on the turf for the first time. I thought he ran kind of a sneaky second. I thought it was better than it was. Kyle, if you can pull up that replay for us.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm trying to make you click around a little bit.
It's good.
But yeah, Broheim is actually the 2 in this race, and there are a couple others. The Old 9 is the 1, and Divisible By is the 4. In the race, the 1 and the 2 were just kind of sitting behind the 3 leaders, and Broheim's the 2 in the orange and blue. Whoa, we're all over the place here.
I know. Sorry.
Anyway, the 1 was just kind of to his outside the entire time, and the 2 really couldn't get out. But when he was down on the rail, he was making up some good ground. Still kind of a little in between horses, which is a little comfortable for these inexperienced 3-year-olds. But I just like the way that he galloped out. Once he kind of got into the clear, it was late. I don't think the stretch out, the horse is not in the top 3. What is that supposed to mean? Anyway, but back to Broheim, just kind of, oh, I got you. But just second time on the turf, stretching out. And interesting to see, we got Raylu Gutierrez to ride, who is a big fan of the pod. Has been on before. And I think from the 1 hole should sit a pretty good trip in a wide open race.
If you have a play of the day in this race, Howard, by all means, that's fantastic. Because my God, this race is not easy by any means. Rostovsky is a horse that I really like, Noah, and based on the time form, I'll show you. They have a bunch of horses fighting for the lead, not necessarily labeled a hot pace, but it looks to be pretty contested. Rostovsky is a horse in that last race. I'm going to show the end of this replay as well. Then we'll talk quick, and then we'll move on to best bets. This is a horse that is the number 9 here that you're looking at, having a little bit of trouble loading at the gate. Doesn't break that fast. It's going to sit pretty much last early, and is going to come running. Finally gets a good, and once he gets in the clear, he's going to come with a pretty good head of steam here. He's going to finish up for at least 3rd, if I remember correctly, or 4th, maybe 4th. But either way, just 4th by 2 lengths. And if I skip a little bit ahead, I mean, where's he going, man? He's way ahead of everyone else on the gallop out. I just thought that was really impressive on the gallop out. I think if Cedillo instead of David Herrera, Cedillo, who is a little bit more of an aggressive jockey than Herrera, at least in my experience, if he gets him a little bit more into the race, I think he's going to have a pretty good shot to be able to win this thing, especially if the pace does get contested up front. Eisenhower Noah is a horse that we both thought was a little bit interesting. I'll just touch on, then we'll move on to our best bets. Is a horse coming off of a second off the layoff for Mandela, first time gelding, first time blinkers, first time route. It's basically, to me, when these types of things go through, it's like a complete fresh start. And if you look at My Miss Sophia was fantastic for Bill Mott in the 2015-2016 season, going long on the turf. So the breeding is there. And you could see turf route, 8 for 21, 103 buyer. Who is that, you might ask? Annapolis. This horse is a half to Annapolis. Actually, no, excuse me, a full to Annapolis. Obviously, it was fantastic all through 2022 and 2023 for Todd Pletcher. I mean, makes a whole, and even her other, I meant to show it, Navision Sunshine, Sunrise, while not as good as Annapolis, still running in that mid 80s level. So both runners were fulls to Annapolis have been very good. First time routing, second time off the layoff at 3, first time gelding, first time blinkers. I think she makes a ton of sense in this race. So obviously you saw that as well with the 9. The last horse I mentioned was One Time Mark for Glatt. This horse was at 4 seconds out of 8 tries and 3 for 3 in second place in the last 3 races. I don't like the post. I just think he's definitely talented enough to be in the money, especially based on numbers wise. But the post is a big concern for me. And with the other pace that's in this race, I think he's going to have to give up a little bit too much early to be able to fight for the win, but could hang on for a piece in this race. Howard says that his play of the day is in that race. Who will it be? You'll have to get the standard power picks to find out. He's going to be a price in the finale, and that's the one through patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. Only $16 a month, $4 every weekend, and you'll get 2 full cards of price plays, spot plays, and pick 5 grids. Price plays, including that horse that Howard has in the last. So go sign up to that if you want to see. Chris Mack says the number 5 as well. I think that's a guess for that. Either way, guys, let's move on. Noah, let's move on to the best bets here, and then we'll move on. Your best bets, 2 win bets. Nice and simple, just the way I love it. Win race number 7, number 4, guy named Joe, and an 11 race on a win on the number 1, Broheim. I need to slow down.
Yeah, I just ended up going with 2 win bets just due to the fact that we've kind of had a limited amount of time to look at these races. So when you do that, it's hard enough to pick a winner, let alone try and get 2 in a row or try and get an exacta or something. But starting with guy named Joe, and you agree with me there, I just think the pace could really set up for him as long as JJ doesn't have him too far back, a little bit closer than they kind of have him on time for him. I think it's going to set up for him. There's not a ton of closers in that race, and I think just because of the big field, you'll get a pretty decent price, maybe somewhere around 9 to 2, 5 to 1, hopefully. And then fast forward to the last race, which, again, we touched on is wide open. I'm going with Broheim, who should improve second on the turf, stretching out. Raylu hops on and should get a pretty good post from the inside. So I'm going with those 2. In terms of the rest of the card, I'll probably put something out on Twitter for the early races. And then if you want to check out more, you can always sign up for the power picks. Again, the full meat ones are still available until tomorrow night at midnight Eastern, I believe. And then even if you don't want to do that, you can sign up weekly, just like the Saratoga ones. So good sequence. Very excited.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. And the funny enough, Noah, again, we were so lockstep. It only makes sense that we would be lockstep on at least one best bet.
Yeah.
Guy named Joe, man, again, pace scenario, everything makes a whole ton of sense for him. He's going to be a pretty middling price. I completely agree with everything you said on him. Makes a ton of sense. I'll work out these best bets, obviously, before Saturday at AP Roscoe on X if you want to find my final best bets, because I know this is a little weird being that I have a double after a win bet. I'll figure it out by the time we get there. Race number 8, a double. Santarena, Noah, again, if he's any good at this point, he should be able to beat that field. Hopefully he doesn't run into another monster. And Ice Cream, You Scream, and Maduro, whole ton of sense in that next race. Should get a pretty good price there. Again, for my full best bets on X at AP Roscoe K, follow me for there. But everyone, that'll conclude Del Mar for the first part of the show, but don't go anywhere because from Hawthorne Racecourse, the director of racing, and he does a whole lot more than that, as we always joke on this show, but my good friend and a good friend of the podcast, Jim Miller. Jim, what's going on, my friend?
Kyle, we need to get you a beer, man. We need to get you all set up. That a boy.
I need to do something. I don't know what I need to do. I need to turn down my ADD, I think is what I need to do.
You guys are working hard. I mean, it's hard to turn around a card real quickly. So that's the biggest thing is you're basically first impression handicapping, and sometimes that's what works best for you too. So it's very tough, but hey, that it does. Sometimes first impressions are the best way to go, and you don't overthink races too much.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you by any means. No, I'll take off the screen for a little bit. Jim, we're going to talk about why we're talking about the races we are.
Yep.
But no, I'll let you go, and then obviously I'll talk to you later, man. But thanks again for joining the show, man.
Yep. See you guys.
Yep. Talk to you later. All right, Jim. Unfortunately, it seems like the weather gods hate us because not only where I live now in Wisconsin, in Chicago, we had a ton of weather come through again over this past weekend and the early part of the week. So looking, unfortunately, like we're off the turf again, at least for Thursday.
Yeah, and for anybody that asks, I mean, 2 nights ago, there was a tornado sighted less than a mile from the racetrack. So we've had over 3 inches of rain over a 72-hour period. I walked the turf course today, and even though we had bright sunny skies, everywhere where I stepped, the ground displaced. So I weigh about 215 pounds. So you figure 1,000-pound animal running 30 miles per hour, you're probably going to tear it up a little bit. So we're not going to be on the turf course tomorrow. So we'll see how things unfold for those races, but a couple of dirt races to look at. The one thing, though, looking ahead for the weekend, looks like it's going to be beautiful. The rest of the week going to cool off a little bit. Sunday's card is a 10-race card. I allowed the racing office to use 5 turf races for Sunday. So We will have a very good card on Sunday. But yeah, tomorrow plan on dirt only and plan on a fast dirt track.
And again, that's the beautiful thing is why, you get 3 inches of rain and by, 2 days later, you're looking at a fast dirt track, which is obviously fantastic. Jim, the 2 races we're going to talk about here, race number 4 is a really nice mile and 70 yard. It's a pretty high claimer, 25,000 N3X running again, mile 70 on the dirt. And we'll talk about race 8 and a little bit of a personal touch onto race 8, but race number 4, Jim, and I actually handicapped all these races already. So for tomorrow, so hopefully we'll be lockstep because I'm very astute yourself. Mile 70 with a full field of 7 in this race. And Jim, you'd have the morning lines in here. The morning line favorite is the number 2 category 10 and probably a very deserving one as well. Where did you land in this race?
So he is a deserving favorite. I used him in the mix, but the 3 executive actions, actually the one that I ended up with on top. And it's just basically off of that last race. Look at that last race back on June the 29th. It was the same race that category 10 comes out of. An executive action in that spot came back from Prairie Meadows to Hawthorne for that race. And this was a horse that had been training at Hawthorne in the past, but Tanner Tracy brought the horse out to Iowa, thought enough to come back, and the horse got a great trip, stalked the pace much of the way around, ran on late. CFV Bullet was a good winner who came right on back to win that one's next start out. But this is a race, too, that there's not really a ton of pace in here. So I think because of that, I think executive action's probably going to rate close, maybe not necessarily on the lead, but should be able to settle close to the pace in here. And I think this is a horse that could get the jump on some of those that are running late in the lane.
I don't disagree with you. And, kind of like that last race, that two length back type of, that's kind of what I keyed in for. I did land on category 10. I know it's nothing, but like you said, makes a whole ton of sense. Miraz has been great. He's 5 for 52. That's usually where he's about around is that kind of 10%, 12% range. I was really keying in on the last time he ran it just on a straight dirt at a mile 70. He was kind of in that, a 1.5 length back type of position. And I can go to time form here, Jim. You see it has favoring front runners. Actually has category 10 on the lead, which I thought was
it's going to be a slow pace. Yeah. And I don't think they're going to go that fast out front. I mean, you look at category 10's last race, the one executive action comes out of, I mean, they crawled to the half. I mean, it was 25 and change, 49 and change. You're probably looking even 24 and 4, still 49 to the half in here. But yeah, category 10 could basically possibly even inherit the lead. But if he does, executive action is going to be right there with him. And then it's going to be a matter of who outkicks who to the wire.
Right. And that's kind of the way I saw it. It's kind of not necessarily who wants the lead. It's like you did. I love that, who inherits the lead on that end. Underneath, Jim, you talked about category 10. Anyone else you want to highlight in here?
I look to the outside with the 7, Path to Success. This is a horse that was claimed for 17.5 out of a start 2 back on the turf. Ran on the main track in that last out, and that was a race that came off the grass. But Mahoney Road was a pretty solid winner in there. Path to Success, the one thing I liked is, again, they went slowly, but this one rated a little bit closer to the pace. Was good enough for second, was a well-beaten second in that spot. But Mike Rivas is a guy that has won more than a share of races at Hawthorne throughout the course of his career. The horse doesn't like to win, though. So, again, this is a horse probably to use underneath. If you can get somewhere between, say, 4-1 and 6-1 in there, maybe a horse to look to in second and third for exactas and trifectas.
Yeah, and we talk about all the time. Horses 1 for 19 at Hawthorne, but 8 for 19 or 8 for 19 in the money at Hawthorne. So, talking about most likely what's going to be a decent price, not one that you necessarily consider on the win end, but one to consider underneath. And talk about Mike Rivas, 0 for 15 this year, 0 for 8 at Hawthorne on the win end, 5 for 8 in the money, by the way. But never see Rivas with a donut. He's definitely won, obviously, in the Midwest circuit. He's definitely won more than his fair share.
Yeah, and Mike's kind of heading towards the end of his training career, so he's got much less horses. I mean, he was a guy that was a leading trainer for numerous meets at Hawthorne. He used to have strings of 40 horses, but if you think about it, he's a guy, and we've talked about him time and again, Cipriano Contreras was his longtime assistant. Cipriano's kind of taken over a lot of those owners and that string of horses, being a younger guy and branching out and doing really well. So Mike kind of holds on to a handful of horses just to keep active there. But he's a very good horseman, spots his horses well, and he definitely will be getting that victory very soon.
Absolutely. And maybe with Path to Success, although he would need to climb a 2 for 43 mountain in order to do so. The other one I only considered, Jim, was Bahamian Native in here. Makes a ton of sense just from a pace scenario as well. Maybe a little slow comparatively to horses like
Like a category 10 executive
10,
action. Right. Yeah.
So, but underneath, sitting that type of first call trip, if you're even thinking about, just underneath wise, this one will be probably in that 8-1 range that you have listed on the morning line. Can make sense underneath.
Yeah, it definitely can make sense underneath, because the thing about it, this is the time when you're coming up to that break at Horseshoe Indianapolis. They race until the 18th, but they're done with entries now for basically almost 3 weeks. So if horses aren't in there, they're going to start looking for spots. We saw that on Sunday's card too. I know Thomas Medina's coming in. Rob Dobbs is coming in with horses on the turf, but this is a horse that actually won over the track looking for a spot in that last out. You're back in the same logical spot again, but yeah, probably not fast enough to make the top, but definitely good enough to contend in here.
Completely agree with you, Jim. Let's move on to race number 8, and this is a 6250 maiden claimer. I'll tell you what, Jim, man, if she doesn't win this race,
horse better win.
I don't know what to do anymore. Peggy's Way, guys, of course, for fans of the show that know, Howard, Paul, Pete, myself, we're all part of Crown's Way Racing. Peggy's Way is one of those horses in that race. We thought we got her for a deal at $35,000 out of the OBS March sale last year. She ran well at Indiana. 2/3 at Indiana, granted not very close, but then came to Hawthorne, ran well that last time out, Jim, man. That was a heartbreaker. She did go quick up front, but man, she should not have been caught.
She was clear in the lane. Yeah, she was well clear in the lane. We thought she could have walked home for the victory, and she almost walked home, and that's what got her caught late.
Yeah.
But she's a horse. She's the lone speed in this race. This is a confidence builder. They're dropping to the bottom. I hope for you guys that you go through, you get that victory, and nobody claims the horse, because this will be a horse that'll work its way through the non-winners of 2 lifetime, the non-winners of 3 lifetime, and eventually work its way back up. But yeah, no excuse really in any of the 3 starts on the meet.
I said to you.
That's the thing. So this has to be the spot. And I don't know if you're going to get 8-5. That's what I laid the horse at. It may be 3-5 in here, but this is the lone speed in this race.
And not only lone speed, Jim, but these 50s are probably way better than a lot of these. You see, recently 22, even a 41 for Irish Spark, for Jimmy DeVito, who you don't see too much. He's gotten another one that's gotten a little bit smaller, in the years going since, when I first learned of, the name Jimmy DeVito. But just going through again, Irish Spark and Peggy are really the only 2 that have numbers comparable in this race.
And that's the thing about it. And you have a lot of horses too that are kind of interesting. It's like, for example, the 6 Lost Sunset, the 9 Sweet Smiler, horses like that. It seems like those are horses that want the top, but the second they get headed, they kind of back out of it. Lost Sunset couldn't make the lead in the last 2, and you saw what the finishes were in each. Peggy's Way is faster than Lost Sunset early. So again, you should take the heart out of that horse early. Same with a horse like Sweet Smile on the outside, who's just kind of 1 pace the whole way around. And that's a horse that could maybe 1 pace underneath to finish 3rd or 4th. Rachel Slavinsky's been riding very well on the meet. I think you're going to need every bit of that 6-1 though to play that horse, because the horse was 4-5, and I don't think should have been 4-5 in that last out. But we'll see how things unfold. I guess if you want an interesting horse, Kyle, maybe go to the 7 Baba's Gal. This is a horse that I actually gave a look to in that last out. Showed a little bit more in that spot, and they went fast up front there, but Baba's Gal did have some run late. So that was something that intrigued me a little bit. You're going to get a price on the horse again. I do think you get every bit of the 8-1, but if you just look at the numbers progression, the horse is kind of starting to head in the right direction. So if they do push things along up front, maybe this is a horse that's picking up the pieces late.
Yep, and that's what I hope for Peggy, man. I hope they don't push things up
race, man.
It's for your time, for God's sake. I would hope, right. Howard. My gosh, man, like I said, she's great in the barn, but we thought 2 back was the time, 3 back was the time, and now the fact that she got caught in that last race like she did, now this has to be the time, Jim.
Well, it should be. And here's the thing, though. She runs for a great barn. Armando Hernandez has had an excellent meet. He takes incredible care of his horses. He does very well at all levels, and they spot their horses really well. So they spot the horses to win. And you know what? Even if you come out of this spot and you win, even if they happen to get claimed, at least you're making money on the purse and the claim. But again, hopefully they go out there, they win by daylight, you keep the horse, and then work your way through conditions.
I don't disagree with you, Jim, by any means. That sounds fantastic.
There you go.
To me. But yeah, guys, like I said, Hawthorne, the lowest win place show takeout in the entire country. It's a fantastic They use always big fields. Jim, as you mentioned, they're going to have a lot of good, especially over the next 3 weeks with Indiana taking a little bit of a break, shipping out. So, like I said, if you're looking for that low takeout, you're looking for good competitive races, Hawthorne's the place to be.
One thing you want to check out too, a week from Sunday, we have 2 $100,000 turf stakes. They're new stakes at Hawthorne. It's open company stakes, turf sprints. The nominations came out. Both of them have a ton of horses in there, but I think they're going to be very good races. We found out that they are going to receive black type for those races today from the Jockey Club. So you could have some very solid fields over there. And we're going to have a fresh lane on the turf course as we go from a far outside rail this week to the far inside rail next week. So definitely worth checking out next Sunday.
Beautiful, Jim. Like I said, just a ton of good things. Looking forward to Hawthorne. Like I said, only getting better as the year goes on. But everyone, thank you guys all so much for watching the show. Greatly appreciate it. Tune in tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern for Howard, Pete, and Paul Picks and Ponies episode talking about Haskell Day and all the stakes going on with special guest Alexa Zepp. And again, if you haven't done it already, I don't know why you haven't, please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. It helps us out a lot. For the director of racing at Hawthorne Racecourse, Jim Miller, for my co-host for the night, Noah Maher, this has been your host, Kyle Roscoe, in episode 91 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. And until next time, everyone, crush your bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Have a great night.